You're watching Silver News Daily. Subscribe for more.
Did you know that silver is on the verge of breaking past its all-time high? That's right. Geopolitical tensions, the global move away from the US dollar, and a crumbling economy are setting the stage for what could be one of the biggest rallies in silver's history. It might sound unbelievable, but the facts don't lie. Stay tuned as we dive into the forces driving this seismic shift and how it could impact your financial future.
For a genuine concern for Ukraine's sovereignty. It's I don't know. It's maybe one of the dumber things I've ever seen, that we were involved to this degree, spending a couple $100 billion defending the Ukraine and going as far as providing long-range missiles, even speaking nuclear, that are being fired into Russia. I would think Putin understands this, understands that he's being goaded, and hopefully has a speed dial number right to Trump's phone, resisting the temptation to drag us into World War III, God forbid. But I want to read something to you that I recently came across and just blows me away. This was just the other night, where Lindsey Graham was talking on Sean Hannity's show. And let me just read this to you. Last week in a Fox News appearance, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said outright that the war in the Ukraine is about money. Namely, Graham told Fox News host Sean Hannity that the U.S. stands to financially gain from Ukraine's vast agricultural sector and $2 to $7 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, alike in a prospective wartime deal with the war-torn, albeit resource-wealthy nation. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it, but the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century, Graham declared. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure the Russians don't take over that place. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the developing world, Graham must. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes from Ukraine. Graham also emphasized that the incoming Trump administration is uniquely positioned to cash out on such resources. Donald Trump is going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals. A good deal for the Ukraine and us, Graham said. He's going to bring peace. It's so full of shit, it's just ridiculous.
Right now, silver prices are at a crossroads, showing short-term bearish momentum. But history has shown us this could be the calm before the storm. Technical indicators reveal that silver has recently broken below its ascending channel, with prices dropping to around $30.90 per ounce. This movement signals the temporary bearish bias, as reinforced by key metrics like the 14-day Relative Strength Index, RSI, which fell below the critical 50 mark. Additionally, short-term price momentum has weakened, with the metal trading below both the 9 and 14-day exponential moving averages. These patterns suggest that investors are hesitant, waiting for the next big signal before committing further. But here's what makes this moment so fascinating. Market corrections like this often precede major breakouts, especially in commodities like silver. Think of it as a spring coiling, preparing to release its energy. Even the slightest positive shift in sentiment or market conditions could reverse the bearish trend, sending silver back toward the upper limits of its recent channel, potentially above $33 per ounce. Historical highs are not out of reach. Now take a closer look at the context surrounding this pullback. Commodities in general have been delivering steady returns across the board this year, with the Bloomberg Commodity Index up over 5% despite headwinds like a strong US dollar and slowing global demand. For silver specifically, this means the overall environment remains supportive. Even with recent declines, silver has still gained more than 30% on the year, outperforming many other asset classes. So why does this matter? Because these short-term dips are often where the most lucrative opportunities lie. Smart investors know that silver is not just any commodity. It's a hybrid, straddling both industrial demand and safe haven appeal. With its role in green energy technologies and its historical relationship to gold, Silver is uniquely positioned to capitalize on the economic and geopolitical forces currently reshaping the market. Will this dip be a stepping stone to new highs, or is it the start of a prolonged downturn? The answer lies in understanding the larger forces at play, which we'll explore in the coming steps. For now, remember that silver's history is full of such moments. Quiet, steady declines that suddenly erupt into massive rallies. Could this be one of them? Stick around to find out.
Administration has done and said it's all a bunch of crap. It's all a bunch of lies. And the craziest part about it all is how divisive this administration has been, where I would venture to say that they put a spin on this on the left-leaning media that make it look like poor Hunter and this was the right thing to do. And it not only that, it pardons it out into the future. Most of the time, these types of pardons are made as they're walking out the door, not with plenty of time leading up to his removal. I mean, he's still got another 40 plus days before he's out of office. Why did he do it now instead of as he's walking out the door? It's pathetic and it's disgusting. And everyone on the left has beaten up Trump for so many stupid reasons, and yet you see stuff like this, and he gets a pass. The Biden family they're criminals, and it's just obvious. And he's a liar. He looked the American people in the face on that ABC News interview. I remember it well. Are you going to pardon your son? No. Are you going to stand by what the juries say in his trial? Yes. Then he lied, and lied in a very material way to protect himself, his legacy. It's just gross, Jesse, and I can't wait fast enough to say good riddance to the Biden administration. And Trump has every right, as far as I'm concerned, just to go after these people who have gone after him. And yet the media is like, he's going to go after everyone and be vengeful. And this is not what we need, but it's what they've done. And then at the very end, after they call it Russian disinformation and they lie and they say it's all a bunch of nonsense, we find out, no, actually it was true. And we're going to pardon Hunter. And the cocaine they found in the White House, well, that was obviously Hunter's too. I mean, the whole thing is deep and dark and gross. And this current administration has done more to damage this country internally and externally than any external foe ever could have done, ever. And this is just another piece of it. I find it to be as distasteful as anything I've ever seen in politics.
Right now, silver prices are at a crossroads, showing short-term bearish momentum. But history has shown us this could be the calm before the storm. Technical indicators reveal that silver has recently broken below its ascending channel, with prices dropping to around $30.90 per ounce. This movement signals the temporary bearish bias, as reinforced by key metrics like the 14-day Relative Strength Index, RSI, which fell below the critical 50 mark. Additionally, short-term price momentum has weakened, with the metal trading below both the 9 and 14-day exponential moving averages. These patterns suggest that investors are hesitant, waiting for the next big signal before committing further. But here's what makes this moment so fascinating. Market corrections like this often precede major breakouts, especially in commodities like silver. Think of it as a spring coiling, preparing to release its energy. Even the slightest positive shift in sentiment or market conditions could reverse the bearish trend, sending silver back toward the upper limits of its recent channel, potentially above $33 per ounce. Historical highs are not out of reach. Now take a closer look at the context surrounding this pullback. Commodities in general have been delivering steady returns across the board this year, with the Bloomberg Commodity Index up over 5% despite headwinds like a strong U.S. dollar and slowing global demand. For silver specifically, this means the overall environment remains supportive. Even with recent declines, silver has still gained more than 30% on the year, outperforming many other asset classes. So why does this matter? Because these short-term dips are often where the most lucrative opportunities lie. Smart investors know that silver is not just any commodity. It's a hybrid, straddling both industrial demand and safe haven appeal. With its role in green energy technologies and its historical relationship to gold, silver is uniquely positioned to capitalize on the economic and geopolitical forces currently reshaping the market. Will this dip be a stepping stone to new highs, or is it the start of a prolonged downturn? The answer lies in understanding the larger forces at play, which we'll explore in the coming steps. For now, remember that silver's history is full of such moments. Quiet, steady declines that suddenly erupt into massive rallies.
Needlessly.
Could this be
This
one of
is
them?
just a
Stick
push
around to find out.
for, a land grab, a resource grab, and at the same time to keep their eyes, on Russia. And it's just ridiculous. We invade Iraq under false pretenses, and we have our eye on Iran, and get to exploit the natural resources of Iraq. Same thing here, and it's the same crap over and over and over again. It is less about the sovereignty of the Ukraine and more about exploitation. This is the reason these countries around the world are finding safety in numbers against the West. It's this type of behavior. It's this type of rhetoric. And Lindsey Graham is a fool for saying it out loud, what most of us already knew. But that's what this is all about, Jesse. It's not about protecting the sovereignty of the Ukraine. It's a proxy war, and it's a war to go in and pillage another country's natural resources for the West and get our money back, as they say, as the military-industrial complex has been massively enriched for the last several years, and it's just complete.
One of the most critical drivers of silver's potential surge lies in the mounting geopolitical tensions that are shaking the foundations of global markets. From the ongoing conflict in Ukraine to growing tensions between China and the West, we are witnessing a realignment of power that directly impacts precious metals. When uncertainty looms, investors historically turn to safe haven assets like silver, as it offers a tangible store of value during volatile times. Take, for example, the sanctions placed on Russia following its actions in Ukraine. These sanctions disrupted global trade flows and intensified a global race for resources. Russia, a major producer of both gold and silver, has been leveraging its precious metal reserves to sustain its economy amid international isolation. This has limited supply in the global market, tightening availability and placing upward pressure on silver prices. But the geopolitical stakes go beyond traditional conflicts. Rising tensions between the United States and China over issues such as trade, Taiwan, and technology have added another layer of uncertainty. China, already the world's largest consumer of silver for industrial purposes, has been ramping up its stockpiles of precious metals, potentially to hedge against future economic or geopolitical shocks. This strategic behavior points to a deeper trend of countries turning inward, stockpiling resources to secure their financial stability against external threats. Then there's the Middle East, where evolving dynamics between OPEC nations and Western powers are also having a ripple effect on global markets. As energy prices rise and inflation continues to pressure economies worldwide, silver's dual role as a hedge against inflation and a vital industrial component becomes even more significant. This unique position makes it a go-to asset during periods of geopolitical strain. As these global tensions converge, silver stands to benefit as both a hedge and a critical resource. But how does this tie into the broader picture of economic shifts and currency dynamics? That's where de-dollarization comes into play, which we'll explore in the next step. For now, consider this. Silver's role in times of geopolitical turmoil is not just historical, it's unfolding right before our eyes.
Keep it quiet by bringing back the ability to say what you want to say, and no more censorship and that kind of stuff, while at the same time moving us towards this tokenized digital surveillance world. So on one hand, it's good. We're going to get our ability to say things again back, hopefully, and won't be censored and kicked off of platforms for having the nerve to say the name of a virus or the president's son's name. I mean, that's how we had to do things. You could never say what kind of virus it was, and you could never, ever say Hunter Biden. I mean, that was the worst thing you could do if you wanted to get your channel taken down or deplatformed. But on the other hand, I still believe that the agenda is to move us towards a digital world, a tokenized world, a world that will be surveilled. And that is where we're going. I mean, you look at the CBDCs, whether or not we get it under this administration, if you take the world's GDP and the countries that comprise all of it, 99% of the countries that comprise the world's GDP have a CBDC in development or already operational. And I think the plan all along was to bring Lael Brainerd in, that she would have been the head of the Federal Reserve had Kamala won. She is a modern monetary theorist. She did develop the CBDC with MIT. She did run point for FedNow, which is Venmo and Zelle on steroids backed by the Fed, and it didn't work. Well, Trump won, but does that mean that we are not going to move towards a CBDC? Does that mean we are not going to move towards a new system? Is there not going to be a reset that will then reset the entire system and then move towards something more digital? I don't know. I've always felt that ultimately was where we were going, that they would do all they could. And that's why I coined the phrase too stupid to be stupid. So many of the things that we've seen over the last few years literally are too stupid to be stupid. I was doing an interview with Tom Luongo yesterday, and he was saying basically this is a British and a Davos has been psyop to, literally destabilize the United States, bring it down, bankrupt it, and destroy it from within. And he has his reasons for saying that. I won't go into that long, lengthy diatribe, but simply to say he believed that, yeah, it is too stupid.
One of the most transformative shifts in the global economy today is the trend of de-dollarization, and its impact on silver could be monumental. For decades, the U.S. dollar has been the world's dominant reserve currency, underpinning international trade and financial systems. But now, cracks are appearing in that foundation as countries around the globe seek to reduce their reliance on the dollar. This shift has significant implications for precious metals, especially silver. Consider the actions of major economies like China, Russia, and members of the BRICS coalition. These nations are actively working to diversify their reserves, replacing dollar-denominated assets with tangible, uncorrelated stores of value like gold and silver. China, in particular, has been leading the charge. Not only is it stockpiling gold, it's also one of the largest consumers and producers of silver, a dual position that strengthens its ability to influence global precious metal markets. Why is this happening now? Several factors are at play. First, the freezing of Russia's dollar-denominated assets following its invasion of Ukraine sent shockwaves through the global financial community. It demonstrated the vulnerability of relying on the dollar during geopolitical disputes. Nations like China took note, accelerating their push to shield themselves from similar risks. By stockpiling gold and silver, these countries are not only diversifying their reserves, but also positioning themselves to withstand potential sanctions or economic pressures from the West. Second, the rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, among BRICS nations, further accelerates the trend. These digital currencies aim to bypass traditional dollar-based financial systems, creating a parallel economic framework where silver and gold could play a critical role as reserve assets backing new financial structures. What does this mean for silver prices? As demand grows from nations seeking alternatives to the dollar, the pressure on limited silver supplies will inevitably drive prices higher. But silver's role isn't just about diversification. It's about hedging against the broader economic instability caused by this currency shift. The more countries move away from the dollar, the more they'll lean on tangible assets like silver to anchor their financial systems. We're witnessing a historic realignment of global economic power, and silver is right at the center of it. How does this connect with the industrial and economic factors influencing silver's potential rally? Let's dive into that next.
How about the surveillance state? Because moving towards a digital world and moving towards, tokenization and digitization of everything inherently is more surveyable, right? I mean, moving towards a cashless society is surveillance in and of itself. I do think that he's surrounding himself with people who will go back to embracing free speech and the First Amendment. I found the cancel culture and the censorship more distressing than anything over the last several years. And certainly it appears as though he will back away from that. And it's concerning to see these other countries, like you mentioned, the UK, Germany, and Australia, imposing these draconian style of rules that, they're almost Black Mirror, they're dystopian. So at least I think in this country, they're saying the right things to move away from that. But here again, it's silently pushing people into a digital world, into a tokenized world, into a world where everything from your everything that we do now is digital. And if we cross that Rubicon, there are two things that I would really want to stay away from. One would be this digital ID that they will probably roll out in the name of election integrity. That's all the biometrics. And if you look at all of the patents Bill Gates has that mesh the digital ID with your health records, your financial records, he's got Visa, all of these. Nomi Prince did an amazing interview, or I guess you could say like an expose on it about a year ago, meshing the patents that Gates has with the digital ID and the future. And I think that we're moving in that direction quietly, and they'll keep.
Beyond its role as a safe haven asset, silver's industrial demand is skyrocketing, and this demand could be a catalyst that propels prices to unprecedented levels. As the global economy grapples with inflation, supply chain disruptions, and a push for greener energy, silver is uniquely positioned to thrive due to its dual function as both a monetary and industrial commodity. Let's start with the green energy revolution. Silver is a critical component in solar panels, electric vehicles, EVs, and other technologies driving the transition to renewable energy. According to recent estimates, solar panel production alone accounts for nearly 10% of global silver consumption, a figure expected to grow exponentially as nations ramp up their renewable energy goals. In fact, as countries like China, the U.S., and members of the European Union aim for net zero carbon emissions, the demand for silver in these sectors could outpace supply in the coming years. Meanwhile, the EV boom is another game changer. Silver's unparalleled conductivity makes it an essential material for electric vehicle components, from batteries to charging stations. As automakers continue to transition their fleets toward electrification, the silver required to meet this demand could stretch the market even further. But here's the kicker: supply isn't keeping pace. Silver mining production has been relatively flat over the past decade, with limited new discoveries and rising extraction costs. Add to this the geopolitical factors we discussed earlier, like sanctions on Russia, which impact the flow of precious metals, and we have a recipe for a significant supply-demand imbalance. This is already evident in declining global silver stockpiles, which have reached their lowest levels in years, and the economic backdrop only strengthens silver's case. With inflation eroding purchasing power and central banks resorting to aggressive monetary tightening, the economy is teetering on the edge of a downturn. Historically, during economic slowdowns, silver's appeal as a hedge against inflation surges alongside its industrial demand, creating a unique double-edged advantage for investors. All these factors are converging to form a perfect storm for silver prices. The question is, with both supply and demand forces pulling in opposite directions, how high can silver go? Let's turn to historical parallels and expert predictions to better understand what lies ahead.
War premium, I get it. I think gold and silver will move up independently of these geopolitical conflicts. Certainly, there's always that added reason to own gold in the face of geopolitical conflict. But if you look throughout the years, very often when a war breaks out, they hit the price of gold. That the commercial banks will short the price to delink the rationale people would have for fleeing currency and moving into commodities. It's been doing that forever and ever and ever. So I don't look at that as being as big of a driver as much as the inflation, the lowered interest rates, the weaker dollar, the tariffs. These are all highly inflationary, and inflation is not going anywhere. In fact, it will be reignited under the Trump administration in many ways. So, they may use that as an excuse to cover more shorts to knock the price down. Ultimately, I don't think it has much bearing at all, to be honest with you.
To fully grasp silver's potential for a historic rally, we must examine the past for clues. Silver has a proven track record of explosive gains during periods of economic instability, geopolitical uncertainty, and surging inflation. By looking at these historical parallels, we can better understand how the current moment mirrors those critical turning points. Take the 2008 financial crisis as an example. As the global economy teetered on the brink of collapse, silver prices surged from under $10 per ounce to nearly $50 per ounce in just 3 years. Why? Investors flocked to tangible assets like silver as confidence in traditional financial systems eroded. Today's environment is eerily similar, with the economy showing signs of strain under the weight of inflation, high debt levels, and geopolitical fractures. Another important benchmark was the silver rally of the late 1970s. Amid sky-high inflation and energy crisis, silver prices jumped nearly tenfold in a matter of years. This was driven not just by monetary factors, but also by a supply crunch, something we are beginning to see echoes of today. Limited mining output, dwindling stockpiles, and increased industrial demand created the perfect conditions for silver's dramatic climb. Fast forward to the present. We're witnessing a similar confluence of factors: global geopolitical tensions, de-dollarization, and a struggling economy. On top of that, industrial demand for silver in green energy and technology sectors is at an all-time high. These are the same forces that historically propelled silver to new heights, but this time the stakes are even higher. Even technical patterns suggest the potential for a breakout. Analysts note that the current pullback in silver prices mirrors past pre-rally corrections, where short-term bearish sentiment gave way to explosive upward movements. The psychological $30 barrier, now acting as a floor, could soon become a launching pad if the global macroeconomic environment continues to deteriorate. Yet there's a key difference this time around. Unlike the past, today's silver market is facing structural supply issues that are far more pronounced. Combined with an unprecedented demand surge driven by green energy initiatives, this imbalance could amplify any rally to levels never seen before. As we tie these historical patterns to the present, one thing becomes clear: silver's future isn't just about following a playbook, it's about writing a new chapter. In the next step, we'll explore what top analysts are saying in their bold predictions for silver's price trajectory in this unique moment in history.
You said all along that, they got nearly 40,000 metric tons, and they would, if need be, find a way to siphon that from the public. However they do it, by incentive or by force, I don't know. That's debatable. They've been mining gold uneconomically for years and years and years using our trade imbalance, and I don't discount it at all. How many people understand that they're the second largest producer of silver in the world? You never hear that. David Morgan will tell you they told him, whoever they are, the Chinese officials in the mining sector, that they're number one in the world. Yeah, I do believe it. And maybe, if you wanted to play, and this is putting on my tinfoil hat, maybe they didn't find it. Maybe they said they did, and they're going to look like they're mining this area because they have far more gold than they've ever let on to believe. Oh, look, now we just added all this gold to our coffers. We just found this big stash. They haven't been updating their numbers for a very long time, and they have way more than they tell us. They're not the sixth. They're probably way, way, way ahead of us in terms of, and it's funny because, we take them at face value and we take the US at face value, but the US is every bit as opaque as China is. In fact, maybe even more so. Why would our holdings not be audited since 53? Why? And turned down repetitively. And why did it take so many years for Germany's gold to be returned to them? It should have just been an easy put it on a couple of airplanes and off you go. The whole thing is very opaque, and it doesn't serve anyone in terms of a system moving perhaps towards something tied to a commodity-backed new system. You look at the BRICS currency that they have proposed, the unit, 40% gold backed. Again, you look at Judy Shelton talking about attaching gold to a system. If you don't, who's going to want to buy our treasuries of any duration? You look at Scott Bessent, it's his largest holding. We're seeing rumblings of gold throughout the system. You have Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, saying any CBDC not pegged to something would be fiat. You have gold reclassified, the only other tier one asset in the world. So to me, gold is going to have a place in all of this, tying it to a system. That's the marriage between digital CBDC and gold, using that blockchain to show the veracity and the immutability. I've always felt that was the path. And if that is the path, then you don't want to tell anyone how much you're accumulating. Doesn't do you any good. It just crowds you out of your trade. You do it very stealth. And they're using the suppression of the Western paper market to do this, to siphon off everything they can. It doesn't do them any good to be forthright about it. So yeah, I think indeed the Chinese have way more than they let on to, and they are telling their citizens to do it. And if they ever did get into a position where they needed that gold to back a new system, whether it be by force or incentive, they would take it. And you know, highly probable. So I don't discount any of that. And whether or not they found it, and they really did find it, and they will mine it, you can bet your bottom dollar they will. Or they didn't find it, and they're telling us they found it as a means to immediately say.
Now, let's dive into what the experts are predicting for silver in the months and years ahead. Market analysts, technical traders, and even geopolitical strategists are converging on one conclusion: silver is primed for a significant rally. Their predictions aren't just based on speculation. They're grounded in a detailed understanding of the forces shaping today's market. Take, for example, analysts from respected institutions like Citigroup and Bank of America, who have raised their silver price targets in recent months. Some are forecasting prices as high as $50 per ounce within the next year, aligning with historical highs last seen during the 2011 rally. Their reasoning: a combination of macroeconomic instability, rising industrial demand, and the tightening supply dynamics we've discussed. John Rubino, a well-known financial commentator, has gone even further, predicting that silver could eventually hit $100 per ounce if the global economy continues to weaken. Rubino points to the massive debt overhang in developed economies, which is eroding confidence in fiat currencies and driving investors toward tangible assets like silver and gold. Meanwhile, technical analysts have also weighed in, pointing out key price levels that, once broken, could trigger explosive movements. For instance, the $33 mark is seen as a critical threshold. If silver can breach this level, it could signal the start of a sustained bull market, with momentum pushing prices toward all-time highs. The recent consolidation around $30 is viewed as a base-building phase, setting the stage for a breakout. Even geopolitical experts are chiming in, noting that silver's role in the global monetary system may evolve as de-dollarization accelerates. Countries like China and Russia are not only diversifying their reserves, but also increasingly using silver alongside gold to hedge against economic sanctions and the weakening U.S. dollar. Of course, not every prediction is bullish. Some experts warn of volatility ahead, noting that silver's dual role as an industrial and monetary asset makes it susceptible to swings in demand. However, even the more conservative projections agree on one point: the long-term outlook for silver remains undeniably strong. With experts painting such a compelling picture, The question isn't whether silver will rise, it's how high and how fast. But what makes this moment truly unique? In our final step, we'll bring all these factors together to explore why this could be the perfect storm for silver to reach unprecedented heights.
Powell and install Lael Brainerd, this modern monetary theorist, and it didn't work out. But I do think that there's something to be said for that. The worst thing that I think we could do would be to take this digital ID. Let's hope we move away from it. But if not, if everyone starts taking the digital ID under the name of, for example, election integrity, we have to be able to, make sure it's you, because there was a big deal about all these people that were allowed to vote without providing any ID. In fact, Gavin Newsom made it a law illegal to ask people for ID. How horrible to ask people for ID to vote, right? You have to show you're 17 to go to an R-rated movie, but God forbid we ask you to show it's really you to vote. Well, no, that's discrimination. Well, and that really pissed a lot of people off. And so maybe that's kind of the backdoor plan. Yeah, take this and our elections will be fair forever. Well, I mean, they were fair forever before 2016, where there were questions whether or not it was fair or not, or 2020 rather. Probably 2016 too. There were people saying it wasn't fair. I mean, look, that's what we're going to probably see is some sort of a digital ID, and that is moving towards that type of place where you're surveilled, period. And I don't think there's any way around that, to be honest with you. But at least we'll get our ability to speak freely back under this current administration. At least that's the way it appears.
This is it, the moment where all the pieces come together. Geopolitical tensions, the global de-dollarization trend, and the faltering economy have set the stage for silver to not just rally, but potentially hit new all-time highs. The forces we've discussed in industrial demand, supply constraints, and safe haven appeal are no longer working in isolation. They are converging to create what might be the perfect storm for silver. Think about it. Silver isn't just a commodity. It's a critical resource that bridges the gap between monetary security and industrial necessity. As nations like China and Russia continue to stockpile gold and silver to diversify away from the dollar, the pressure on global silver supplies is growing. Add to this the relentless demand from green energy and electric vehicle industries, and it becomes clear that the balance between supply and demand is tilting dramatically in silver's favor. Let's not forget history. Silver's explosive rallies in 2008 and 2011 were driven by similar dynamics, but today's conditions are even more extreme. We're looking at unprecedented geopolitical instability, a looming global recession, and an industrial revolution fueled by green energy. Silver is no longer just a hedge against inflation. It's a cornerstone of future technology. This dual role amplifies its importance and potential value. So, how high could silver go? Some experts predict a move past $50 per ounce, while others, like John Rubino, suggest $100 is within reach. With the current trajectory of economic and geopolitical trends, these predictions are no longer far-fetched. They're rooted in the tangible shifts reshaping the global economy. The opportunity here is undeniable. For investors, this might be the moment to seriously consider the role of silver in their portfolios. But as always, a reminder, this isn't financial advice, and every investment comes with its risks. What's clear, though, is that silver's unique position in today's market makes it a potential game changer in the months and years ahead. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to subscribe for more content like this and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Are we on the brink of a historic silver rally, or are there more twists to the story? Let us know.